everyone, this is A Bit of Business. My name is John Fitzgerald, and on behalf of Lear Media TV and the British and Irish Trading Alliance, welcome to the show. Our topic today, ladies and gentlemen, is international expansion, a subject we're covering really due to popular demand from our audience. And while many businesses may aspire to expand internationally, it can certainly seem like a daunting task. However, for many businesses and BITA members in the UK in particular, in a post-Brexit world where Ireland is now effectively an international market, international expansion has become a necessary reality for many businesses rather than an aspiration. Our guests today are James Maguire and Neville Murphy. James is a director at Crannull in London, the construction industry lead generation specialists. He is a long-time BITA member and supporter and has over 20 years experience within the construction sector. He is also a prolific networker and very well connected. Neville is head of business development at Mia Air in Dublin, who provide clean air solutions for schools, offices, retail outlets, and commercial premises to improve indoor air quality. Neville is also heavily involved with the Dublin GAA football team and has witnessed up close the unprecedented success of the great Dublin teams over the last decade. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thanks, John. Great to be here.
Guys, I'm going to start with you on this, James. And you have expanded successfully, in your case, to Australia. So can you tell us a little bit more about your core offering within Crannull, and then share with us when you decided to go international and what the main considerations were when you made that decision?
Certainly. So as a business, Crannull, we've been going for 12 years now, and it was set up by myself and business partner Tom Fitzgerald. And our main proposition is we help people in the construction sector find new clients. So basically getting their meetings, tender opportunities with people such as developers, main contractors, architects, whoever it might be that is looking for new clients. So that's our core business. We're a marketing sector, but we focus within the construction sector and the built environment. So we're based out of Luton. We cover the UK and Ireland, small office over in Turles in Tipperary as well, but our main office is UK and Ireland. Now, over the years, we've worked with a couple of clients who have requested that we help them get into other countries, one in particular many years ago in the US. And it was quite an interesting fact that we were able to run that out of the UK, and we still have a client who's based down in Wexford, actually, who we're calling into consulting engineers in the US for. With the time difference in the US, not too difficult to run out of the UK. And they actually like the alternative, you know, a UK or Irish accent calling into the market, and made us slightly different. Probably about 6 years ago, business partner Tom Fitzgerald thought, you know what, let's go into the Australian market. Again, our key offering is about getting on the phone and talking to people. So we can deliver where people speak the same language. We cannot deliver where we don't, because it's all about communication for us, straightforward for that. So America is one where we managed to help clients get into, but our proper expansion into Australia, again, legislation from the construction industry, a lot of things have actually, you know, developed from the UK market, so terminologies are very similar. And also there was a personal ambition from Tom to actually go over to Australia and spend more time over there. So there was a business and a personal reason. But quite right, John, with what's going on in the world, it's nice to actually, you know, as they say, don't have all your eggs in one basket, to actually look at different markets around the world to see where you should go to. So initially we thought, right, Tom went over, explored the market, got to understand, spent a month over there exploring the market, got to understand what the key differences were, what the key different systems were. And then we thought, we need someone with a little bit more intelligence of the market in that country on the ground. And during his research and that, we found a partner who we decided to put in as a proper partner for Crannull Australia, a Kiwi chap by the name of Sam O'Rourke, who decided to go into partnership with us on the Australian operation, just because he knew some of the systems, the terminologies, the databases a little bit better. And I would say that was one of the key things that we needed to do, because no matter where you go internationally, you know your own market really well, but there are some key fundamentals from country to country that you just might not be familiar with that will trip you up and make you look amateurish. So that was quite an important factor that we did. Also, we did think, can we go 24/7 out of the UK? And we did look at some people working out of the UK to cover the Australian market, which we did manage for a handful of clients initially. But to actually get that significant growth, we needed to be in the ground in Australia with a home. And that's what we did. We actually had another partner we knew over there who didn't come into the business with us, but they'd had experience of working for us in the UK. And we were able to set them up in Australia in an office. And then we started to gain some traction with some new clients. And when was it? March 2020, 12th of March 2020, Tom landed in Australia 2 days before they shut down for COVID, him and his family, and they've been there ever since. And we've now grown. We've got about half a dozen people working for us out of offices in Perth and Tasmania. And that has now helped us grow over the last 2 years. But yeah, it was a fundamental thing being on the ground over there and not doing it from overseas.
Very good. And what I want to do is come back to you in a minute, James, because I'm curious, if you were doing it all over again, what would yourself and Tom do slightly differently? Before that, let me go to Neville and ask you the same question, Neville, because I can't think of a more relevant business right now in a post-COVID world than Mia Air and the clean air solutions that you provide for commercial premises and schools and such like. So tell us a little bit about how your world within Mia Air has changed over the last couple of years, and also how you're now treating the UK effectively as an international market.
Yeah, well, I guess you're right. I mean, the clean air bit it's always been an issue. First and foremost, air pollution and airborne virus and bacteria has always been there. COVID highlighted it. So while there was a reactive element to our business, there was something that was, it's always been in the air. It's always been hanging around. But just maybe not as prevalent in people's minds. The company who manufacture Mia Air is a Turkish company called Micropore. And they're almost 40 years in business as air filtration experts. That's all they do. They just make filters. And obviously the housings, the casings for the filters. But they are filtration experts. So when we went looking, I suppose, to find an indoor air solution to the problem that has been there, all roads led us to Turkey and to Micropore, essentially. So over the last couple of years, obviously, we took on the official distribution rights for the Republic of Ireland initially. And I'd say we most certainly didn't treat it lightly in terms of the research that went into finding the right product and finding the right solution. I say because Micropore are renowned, they would be considered to be in the top 5 global filtration experts and manufacturers, employing, I think, over 2,000 people across the world in the US and in Europe and in Turkey. So when we went, thankfully our board of directors are extremely resourceful and went to great lengths to find the best product on the market. And it took a bit of time to actually do that. And they visited a number of countries and a number of factories and a number of products. But eventually we settled on the Mia Air product. And while some people might have seen that as quite an arduous timeline and task, what it meant was that when we landed into the market here in Ireland with Mia Air, we were convinced we had the right product to service the industry. We were convinced, yes, there was cheaper products, more affordable products on the market that could have been bought in your normal electrical retailer or whatever store you might think of. We knew we had a premium product. It wasn't going to be for everybody because price might be a little bit restrictive. But again, we feel for a premium product that wasn't overly restrictive. But we knew that we had something that was of medical grade standard. And there's probably only a couple of products on the market that can claim that they are of medical grade, operating theatre standard. So ours was one of those. So when we took the product in and we started our marketing campaign, we really hit the ground running. And we knew we had absolute confidence in the product that we've had. You have seen it up close and personal. You know, it's a sleek piece of kit. It looks well in any environment. It's got the technology behind it, but it also has all the relevant certification behind it. So when people say, how do you know it works? It's producing air. How do you know it works? You can't see it. You've just got to trust the science at that stage. And you look at all the certification. So it's manufactured EN 1822 standards, ISO, CE, ECARF, which is there as a standard for people who suffer with allergies. So it had all of this behind it. So yeah, how does it work? How do we know it works? You just have to trust the science. But we knew we had a really, really top quality product, which had been successful in lots of other markets. So that's why I suppose we took it on and we went with it, and it was a massive success instantly. And I don't say that lightly, instantly. It became a massive success in the marketplace because I think the depth of knowledge that our team had been given by our directors who had done the research, the depth of knowledge that we had, and the fact that we were very, very much customer service centered. So, you know, whether it was for one machine or for 100 machines, we didn't care. We'd travel, we'd get in the car, we'd drive down the country, we'd give it the time online, whatever was necessary. And you know, in the world we live in with social media and how quickly things can spread, thankfully our name spread quickly for the right reasons.
And you also have a team in the UK, Neville. So when did you decide to establish that UK presence? And has that changed markedly in the post-Brexit environment now that we are effectively operating in two separate markets rather than one European market?
Well, what happened there, John, realistically, was that when we saw the opportunity in the UK, there was a slight presence from a different company in the UK had been representing, had the MIA Air license for a period of time, but they didn't really do anything with it, and they weren't prepared to carry it on. And the company in Turkey, in Micropore, asked us, would we like to look at taking it on into the UK market? And a bit like James said earlier, when we had done it with some other products that we had, some other businesses that we had done the UK piece. So we had a little bit of ground in that market anyway. But in terms of the I suppose, not, what would you say? It was a different product in a different space. But it, you know, you're dealing with people in the UK from Ireland. And what we had realized with the previous business ventures was, like James said, you need people on the ground. You need experts on the ground. So it was important for us to partner up and to make the connection with a reputable, essentially engineering firm that could provide field engineers on the ground for us. So we still travel back and forward to do the appointments, to make the sales, to meet with the potential clients. But once we have them in and we've delivered, we also have partnered with an engineering firm now who have 18 field engineers all over the UK. So if we have systems deployed in London and for whatever reason, be it for a service reason, or if there's a problem or an after sales issue, whatever it might be, we know that we can contact our field engineers in the UK and they can go and they can make that call and service the client that way. So it was very important for us to have that. As James said, it was very important to have that local piece. Even though we're only across the water, even though it's only a half an hour on the flight and whatever else, you know, if somebody has an issue, thankfully, the issue rates are very, very low again, because we know we've a top class product that doesn't cause many issues. But if there is an issue, and there always is something, we know that on the end of a phone call, we can have somebody with you within 24 hours. So it was vitally important.
Boots on the ground is a theme coming through here, guys. And I think that makes perfect sense. James, back to you again. And that question, if you were doing it all over again, what would you do differently in relation to the Australian venture?
Oh, a great question. You know, when you go back over the years and think, if only I knew now what I knew, or knew then what I knew now, it'd be fantastic. And I suppose we've set up very much during the COVID era as well. So none of that was in the business plan to start with anyway. So, you know, I think the biggest challenge is when we started, once Tom had moved over there 2.5 years ago, was the growth was, you know, paused because you couldn't leave state. You know, he was stuck in Western Australia in Perth and could not travel. And we all know you've got to go out and meet people. It's really important. But you can't change that. That's not something you go back and change. I suppose probably one of the biggest things we've learned is whilst, you know, it's like how the UK and Ireland have a special relationship. We know each other really well. So Australia feels like that as well. You know, we all know people over there in very similar backgrounds. But some of the laws are still different than that. And probably the things that took us don't know by surprise, but just a little bit more interesting was, the labour laws in Australia are, so different. Employees have so many more, probably protectionist rights over in Australia than they do here. And things from sort of like contribution from medical insurance and contributions in pensions, holidays and all those things was probably quite a big eye-opener when we're familiar with how we've operated over here. And that was probably one of the biggest things that you think, that would be interesting to know a little bit more about, maybe before we got really, drove into it. But as well as the work population, Australia's got very high employment. So, getting good people is really good. Something we've learned over the last year is there are good people in areas that don't have high employment. And that's hence why we're not only got an office in Perth, we actually do in Tasmania as well, because that's where there's quite a lot of people, but with a lower employment rate. So it's good to go and find, our raw material is people. And it's important to find good people, and you have to go out and find them in the right places. And that's our product, really, getting the right people. So we've learned quite a bit in terms of people, places, and regulation over the few years that, it'd be great to know on day one, but everything's a journey and you pick it all up along the way sometimes.
And what about the role of investment, James, in that decision process to go to Australia? Were you funding this internally, or were you looking for external investment to finance the international expansion when you decided to do it?
Yeah, well, for ourselves, we decided we'd do it internally, and that we decided, it was the time was right. We put some money aside and say that's what we're going to invest into the business with a certain amount of time to get start making the return. As everything's a cost until it starts making the profit. And I suppose initially we started to try and get the groundwork going over here before putting a huge investment on the ground in Australia. But I think once we did get the people in the offices overseas, it made it easier to consistently service. But I suppose the also thing, we had to be accepting that it was a longer time from our original plan to get a return because of the COVID thing, which hit us and we didn't know about it. And it's interesting because when Tom arrived, he couldn't leave. He couldn't suddenly go, I have to come back, because everything was closed 2 days later. So there was no choice but to make it work and to find a way to make it work, which is what we've done.
Neville, have there been differences in the responsiveness to the Mia Air product offerings between Ireland and the UK as COVID started, as it progressed, and then we're coming back out of the pandemic?
I would think the two markets are quite similar, John. I think what we have found is that it's quite a seasonal business. So in the summertime, when the windows and doors are open and, natural ventilation blows through houses, offices, people eat outdoors if they can, or, beer gardens and pubs, whatever it might be. We found that there was a seasonal aspect to it. But in terms of what would I say? The Irish and the UK market are quite similar, but they're actually a little bit, I would suggest, when it comes to the indoor air quality issues, I'd suggest they're a little bit behind the rest of Europe, and possibly behind in terms of their knowledge. When I say behind in their knowledge, and maybe where the priority of indoor air quality sat within a business, because it is a cost, it is a service, and it was kind of there was an element certainly here of it'll be grand, we'll open the windows, which, as you saw at Christmas time, with the schools, the government issued something like 64 million euros in grants to primary and secondary schools, because they were will be grand, opening the windows. They had to do, and everybody was freezing, and then they had to have some form of ventilation. So you were having kids and teachers in classrooms with hats, coats, and scarves on, and colds and flus were rampant then. And because colds and flus were sniffles and whatever else, it was so similar to COVID, you couldn't take the chance, and everybody was out. So there was huge learnings insofar as there was a lot of necessity buys. There was people bought because they were given grants, obviously, within that sector. There were other people that bought because people like us were advertising and throwing the branding around and saying that, yeah, look, these are going to help you, and they will, and they still will, and they always will. But it was born out of that COVID piece. But of late, what I would say is we don't really mention COVID when we have any of our marketing, or if we're out meeting clients or like that. We're talking about indoor air quality now and the service that provides. The airborne, the fact, and again, you were with us in Dublin at the BITA lunch, John, and you saw part of the presentation was that, your indoor air quality is up to 5 times more polluted than your outdoor air quality. People don't realize that. And again, there's an element of, sure, we have a HVAC system, we have our air conditioning, but again, it's an education piece, it's knowledge. The HVAC systems will literally recirculate the air that you have. It won't clean it. It'll heat it or cool it. But most of them, unless they're state of the art and quite expensive, they won't actually clean the air. So while people thought, oh no, I'm grand, we have this, it wasn't enough. And it's becoming more and more prevalent. It's getting spoken about at government level. In a number of countries, it has the Health and Safety Acts in workplace well-being. It's brought things forward where it's now part of legislation. It's not quite there in Ireland yet, but it has been discussed at government level. Will it eventually come in? I think it probably will, but it will take time like everything else. So I would definitely say that Ireland and the UK has definitely been a little bit slower to respond than other parts of Europe, but still from our point of view, there's a very, very healthy business there.
Fair enough. Okay. Well, James, I want to come to you now with pick your brain a little bit and get your top 3 tips for any business watching when it comes to international expansion and your best advice.
I would probably say, like you mentioned earlier, the tip that the theme that we've probably both mentioned is local knowledge. Local knowledge. You can do as much research as you can, but there's nothing like living and breathing in the market and those little idiosyncrasies that you just don't pick up from being overseas, and that's definitely one that I think I would say is extremely key. 2 is, again, knowing all the legislation and everything that fits behind your product. From our point of view, I suppose it was just getting up to speed on the major differences, in employing people on the commitments that you've got to each party and things like that was a fantastic thing for us. And that, like I say, is like our product. You need to know the legislation around the product and where it can, and where it can fit in the market. And then 3, I suppose, massive tip is timing. We chose the time when to go. It seemed like the perfect time, but we had unforeseen circumstances which stopped that, which didn't stop us, slowed us down, because everything's going great now. And do you know what? It maybe helped us where we were slowed down. We might have tried to run before we could walk, but COVID made us probably slow down. But yeah, timing's everything as well, because you've got to make sure you're hitting the market at the right time to help you expand.
Very good. Neville, same question to you based on your experience of the Irish and the UK markets, your top 3 tips for anyone looking to successfully expand.
I would think very similar to James. And number 1 would be the local knowledge piece. And again, we've worked with James and Crannull on some lead generation for the UK. So I think that is vitally important, hugely important. The second one that I think was, again, and this came through the Friday morning BITA networking calls, as we all got used to doing the Zoom calls. And I remember on one of the calls, and you have to forgive me, I can't remember exactly which of the guys it was that said it to me, but we were chatting one morning and we were talking about the fact that the Irish market, we'd been very successful in the Irish market, and we had just recently taken on to the UK expansion. And one of the guys, and as I said, I'm embarrassed that I can't remember the name of who I was talking to, but there was a number of people around the table, had said that they had done something quite similar in the last 12 to 18 months. And the best bit of advice he said that he had been given and he was passing on to me was, the UK, we're in Ireland with 5.5 million people or whatever it is. And the UK is obviously a much, much bigger market with 70 odd million. And he said, you can't get around it all. You just can't. Physically, you can't do it. And if you think of the populations of some of the big cities, London, Manchester, Birmingham, Edinburgh, places like that, with massive populations, the size of Ireland in its own right. So one of the tips that was given to me was pick a region. Start with that region and get in. Is it an easy in, easy out? Can you get on a flight every day of the week and get over in the morning and back early in the afternoon if you need to be back at your desk in the afternoon? And that you know, that sort of focus. Okay, God, right. So Dublin into Liverpool, Manchester is a half an hour, 30, 40 minutes, whatever it is. Get from the airport into the city centre, not a big thing to do that. Can you set up a number of meetings in the one day and get around and still get home that evening? So be clever about the region, because if you get little wins in a region, it will organically grow into other regions. So that was a huge one for us, and one that has worked well for us. And I think the third one, realistic, and it'll be the same no matter what you're in, is patience. You just got to be patient. We all want to run before we walk, as James said. You know, again, we thought we've got this magic product and it's fantastic and it's certified and it's guaranteed. It does what it says. We know it does what it says. What happened was, you know, it slowed down because the weather changed. So while we would love to be absolutely selling 10 times the amount of units we're selling every week, we had to learn there is external factors at play here. So patience. And it will be the same with any business, or the same with anything you're doing, be it a sports team, be it business, be it your kids in school. Take your time, look, listen, and learn.
Very good. Gents, fantastic advice there. Boots on the ground, a clear theme. I think understanding the local legislation and ways of working, critically important, especially if it's a quite foreign market. And I think, Neville, your thought there about picking a geography and a location, investing in that geography and location and going deep, so to speak, rather than you're trying to boil the ocean, as they say, makes great sense. So guys, I think we should leave it there given our time. So thank you both very much for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been A Bit of Business. My name is John Fitzgerald. Thank you so much for watching.
Thank you.
Thank you.